Alright, so in this video we will tune the shocks on this MJX Hypergo 10208 truck. Now as you can see that the shocks on this truck are a bit on the stiffer side. It simply doesn't absorb any impact, whereas the shocks on the Omni Terminator are actually quite good. So we will try to replicate or improve the shocks on this truck. So first we have to remove the shocks by removing the screws. Now once the shock is separated, it's actually very stiff and not that easy to press it. So because MJX have used 3000 CS silicone oil in the shocks, the viscosity of the shock is quite high and it makes the suspension quite stiff. So the suspension won't be absorbing the impact and it will actually travel towards the driveline and the truck. The spring tension is somewhere in between. It's not that stiff or soft. Now, if you notice, the shock shaft doesn't rebound, it just stays there, which is actually not good. So once we remove the shock cap, we can see the silicone oil, and I'm going to pour this in a tiny bottle. So this is the stock 3000 weight shock oil, and you can see how stiff and thick this 3000 CS oil is. Now if you want, you can just install the fresh oil right away, or you could disassemble the shock completely and clean it and then install the fresh oil. So I'm going to clean the shocks thoroughly and then pour in fresh oil. So the shock cap also has a metal washer. Alright then, so I've cleaned all the parts and I've assembled 3 shocks. The fourth one we will see how to put it together. So I'll be assembling this rear shock just to show you guys. So first we will install the O-rings over here. Next, make sure that they are in place and make sure to lubricate the O-rings. Next we have this another silicone O-ring which we have to place above this plastic collar in this bottom shock cap. So place it over here and make sure it's lubricated, and screw in the bottom shock cap. Make sure to add a drop of oil on the shock shaft so that it doesn't damage the silicone O-rings. And then slide it in carefully. But make sure to install this plastic collar, which is basically a bushing, but it's in plastic, and it should be installed before you install the shock shaft over here, and then install the shaft. And after this you can secure the bottom cap all the way. Use a plier if you want to tightly secure the bottom shock cap so that the oil doesn't leak. And next we will place this washer from the top of the shaft. So this will basically provide support to the shock piston, and place the piston like so. Make sure it's seated well, and after that install the nut. Use the small cross wrench and tighten it. And make sure that the piston moves smoothly and there's no binding. So that's how you assemble the shocks. Now here we have the top shock cap with the bladder. I've already lubricated this, and you do have a washer in the shock cap as well, this one. So make sure that you install this and install the shock bladder correctly. Now I'm going to use this HPI Baja 1000 weight diff oil. The stock oil from factory is this 3000 CS silicone oil, and it is quite stiff and thick. As you can see, it is quite viscous, so that's the reason why the shocks are very stiff. Nevertheless, I'll be pouring this 1000 weight shock oil, or silicone diff oil you can say. Make sure to fill it completely, because once we move the piston slightly, there will be some air bubbles and the level will drop, and you have to be a bit gentle with this, otherwise the oil could spill. So move the shaft up and down for the air bubbles to clear. And if you want, we can keep the shock aside for some time so that the air can escape, or you could simply install the shock cap and assemble the shock. So before you screw in the shock cap, make sure the shock shaft is pressed, and then you twist the shock cap. There should be a bit of bounce back, so the shock should release outwards. And once the excess oil is out, firmly twist the shock cap so that it's secured. So at this stage, our shock assembly is complete, and clean any excess oil. Similarly, I'll assemble the other shocks as well. This one is for the front, which is shorter in length. Again, make sure that you clear the air bubbles and keep the shock aside for some time. So basically we are bleeding the shocks to remove any excess air bubbles so that the shock can travel, or the piston can travel smoothly. So you can see the amount of tiny air bubbles that we have, and it's always good to clear the air. So keep it aside for some time. So once the air is cleared out, if you want, you can add some more oil depending on the level, and press the shaft all the way and secure the cap. There should be some excess oil that should flow out. Make sure that the shaft travels all the way up. If it doesn't, loosen up the shock cap and let some more oil flow out. So this is how it should be. There should be some slight rebound on the piston, but it shouldn't be a hard one. It should be soft and smooth. So that's what you have to look out for, like this. So once you're satisfied with the smoothness or the action of the shock shaft, you can now proceed to install the springs. So since we have two different sizes on the front and back, make sure to install the correct spring on the shocks. So this one is the front shock with the shorter springs. Grab the spring retainer and install it. So make sure everything is smooth and soft. Adjust the collar for the desired tension that you'd like to have on the shock. So this for me seems to be perfect. Similarly, I'll install this spring on the other shock. So install the spring retainer and make sure it's in place correctly, and adjust the collar. And make sure that the level is aligned so that the height of the truck is more or less balanced on both the sides. Lastly, I'll install the spring on the rear shocks. Place the plastic retainer and adjust the collar for the appropriate tension you'd like. So this seems to be alright, and so now we can install the shocks on the truck. Now on the shock tower we have 3 holes. So the default is in the center. So if you want, you can adjust the mounting position of the shock. On the lower arms as well we have 3 holes, so you can choose the mounting position and accordingly install the shocks. On the bottom I've installed the screw on the innermost hole just to get a bit more height, whereas the default is in the center. Alright, so there we have it. As you can see and hear, the shocks feel and sound a lot more plush and soft, so they are absorbing the impact. Thanks a lot for watching. and do subscribe if you are new to my channel.